weapon, some blind guy's foot to the back of their head. Hello summoners and welcome back to Pro Guides. Today we will be discussing the history of the Insec. Today it is pretty common to see Lee Sins make flashy outplays. Half of the outplay montages on YouTube have some kind of Lee Sin play, but Lee was not always considered such a high skill cap champion, so where did that all begin? Well, with a pro player named Insec, that's where. Insec is a very important historical figure in all of League of Legends, but really quick, before we jump into it, today's question of the day is what outplay of yours are you the most proud of? This one time, I did get a pentakill on Lissandra support by just killing their backliners and letting my passive finish off the other three. It really wasn't an outplay, but I said that it was in all chat, and that's what matters, right? Let us know your answers in the comments down below, and also before we get started, are you always getting ganked, constantly demolished? Well, don't worry, because we've got you covered. Pro Guides is the #1 proven way to quickly level up your League of Legends skills. Whether you are looking for tier lists, champion guides, coaching, or courses from your favorite pro players, Pro Guides is where you'll find that stuff. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description down below and start improving right now, and with all that being said, let's jump into the video. While I'm sure that most of you have seen the Insec performed in one of your games, you may not have heard it called that before. So what are we referring to? Well, the Insec is a move performed on Lee Sin that lets him get behind his target and then ult them into his team without the use of flash. This is done by first landing his Q, reactivating it to go in, quickly placing a ward behind his target, using his W to dash to the ward, and then finally using his ult to send an enemy back into his team. As mentioned, the really important thing here is that this can be done without having to burn flash. Believe it or not, initiating fights or picks by removing an enemy carry from the equation is considered very helpful by most pros and analysts, so being able to do this without being tied to your flash cooldown is a pretty big deal. So who is Insec? And why was it such a commonplace move today, and why is it such a big deal? Well, Insec is a Korean jungler, and though he retired in March of 2019, his name will live on forever in League of Legends lore. Let's set the scene. In Season 3, Insec had joined Korean team KT Rolster B, and they were starting to make a name for themselves as one of the best teams in the world, and Insec was one of the best junglers in the world.
That engage from Insec, kicking Imp into the back lines, was just beautiful.
He would lead his team to the finals in the Olympus Champions event, and even though he and his team lost 3-1, he had gained so much popularity that he was chosen to be Korea's jungle representative for the All-Star event in Shanghai. And it was here that Insec would not just help the Korean All-Star team claim victory, but also immortalize his name through a revolutionary new Lee Sin mechanic. It was May 24th, 2013, and Korea's All-Star team was facing off against the European All-Stars in round 1 of the main event. Almost 23 minutes in, and the game was relatively even, with the Koreans possessing a slight gold lead despite being behind 1 kill and 2 turrets. Europe had pushed up to Korea's tier 2 turret in the bottom lane and was grouping up for a siege. Europe's ADC in mid Yellow Pete and Alex Ich were pathing up the lane while the rest of the team was setting up vision in the jungle. However, what they didn't know is that Insec's Lee Sin was waiting in the lane bush. Insec was ready, and as soon as Yellow Pete walked up, he would cue the Varus, go onto him, ward hop behind him, and ult him right into the laps of his team. Any player will tell you that winning a 4v5 is very tough, and with Yellow Pete swiftly 4-0'd, the Koreans would dominate the teamfight. This decisive moment gave Korea the reins, and they proceeded to win the game, then the series, and eventually the finals. Bonus pro tip: hang a photo of Insec's face next to your computer for a free boost in Lee Sin mechanics. It definitely works, and it's definitely a normal thing to do, and not creepy at all. The reason why this moment felt so alive and it was so special is that the way this move happened and the way that it was performed. The Insec had never been done like this before. It wasn't because it was done in pro play, and it wasn't because it was done in a team fight or because he kicked the Varus into his team. Those things had all been done before. Lee Sin players had queued in and flash kicked plenty of times, but only being able to do this maneuver when flash was up made it somewhat inconvenient. However, there's a way to get around this by first using Lee Sin's W safeguard to set up the ult angle instead of using flash. Fans, pros, and casters alike were all blown away, and if you look at Insec's smile after the game, you can see that he knew he just did something pretty damn cool. Not only did he get to show off his skills at the professional level, but he got to show it off to an international audience, maximizing exposure and lighting the Lee Sin player base on fire. Even though Lee Sin says blindness is no impairment against the average Twitch main, League's favorite blind monk went from handicapped by flash cooldown to being handy capable of roundhousing nerds anywhere at any time. The Insec, as it came to be known, opened everyone's eyes to what Lee Sin was truly capable of. His viability exploded almost overnight, and ever since then he's been one of the more popular jungles regardless of how the meta has shifted over the years. Everybody loves this champ. Lee Sin's very strong early game with solid mobility and great damage, not to mention his excellent ganking tools, all make him a very popular champion among the community. Just like every other early game champion though, Lee Sin had to create advantages for his team early because he would fall off in the late game. When we say a champion falls off in the late game, it doesn't necessarily mean that they stop being able to do anything, it just means that their optimal build and kit are hindered by what tends to happen in the later phases of the game, usually teamfighting. Back then, if Lee Sin didn't have flash to do his flash ult, all he could really do in a teamfight was go in, deal some damage, and die, or maybe peel for a carry with his W shield and ult. With the advent of the Insec though, Lee Sin could now be a consistent threat to carries, and as such, didn't necessarily have to lose relevance as much as other early game champions needed to. This versatility is why we see Lee Sin so often, even if he can't see us. With all this prominence came progress, and Insec's trademark maneuver has grown into something much bigger than what it started as. While technically the Insec is only meant to be referred to using a ward hop to kick a champion into your team, these days it's widely used by the community as a label for any method of kicking an enemy champion into your team, even if you just use the flash. Sometimes people even use this term regardless of the champion that does it. Tristana, Jayce, Xin Zhao, even Vayne. If you quickly get behind your target and launch them into your team, there's a fair chance that someone will call that an Insec. If you fast forward to 2020, Lee Sin players have had many years to push the limits of what their champion can do. Like at least 200 plus collective years of experience, easily I'd bet. And through all of this testing, despite lots of in-game experimental tries and needless deaths, experimenting if you would, Lee Sin players have now found even crazier maneuvers that build off of what the original Insec established. The first of these is called the ladder Insec. Instead of performing a ward hop, Lee Sins will use W to an allied champion in order to get behind the target and land the kick. This is useful when you're out of wards and a teamfight has already broken out, and one of your allies has graciously positioned themselves behind an enemy. The second one is a little more complex, and it's called the drive-by Insec. To perform this move, the Lee Sin takes their second Q during a ward hop to remove the lockout on using their kick, thus gaining access to kicking their opponent backwards before completing the Q animation. The third technique is the quick sec, which is done just like a normal insec, but instead of ward hopping, you activate your R first, then you flash behind the enemy before the animation finishes, thus reducing how much time your target has to react. The fourth technique is the in and out sec. This move is very useful if Lee Sin needs to give himself an escape from a bad situation. To pull it off, Q to your target, W behind them, Alt flash combo to optimize the angle, then reactivate your Q to follow them out. More recently, a newer combo called the L-Sec became popular, and to execute this, you flash to the side during your Q's recast travel time, then proceed with the standard Insec combo as normal. It gives the appearance of a zigzag pattern, hence the name L-Sec, and this one is mostly useful if you're anticipating some kind of skill shot ability that will stop you from reaching your destination, but as with most other aspects of Lee Sin, it's open to creativity. If any or all of this sounds fun for you, definitely give him a try. Lee Sin players are some of the most mechanically adept players in League, so learning him is a great way to improve your skills overall. The trade-off here is, as with any high mechanic champion, Lee Sin only works well if you put in the time to master him. You have to practice, and then practice some more. You'll probably make a lot of mistakes early on in your Lee Sin career, but don't be discouraged. Lee is a difficult champion, but he's very rewarding, so go into the practice tool and grind away on your combos, check out some montages, read some guides, maybe check out ProGuides.com and seek some help. But the most common misconception about Lee Sin, and I can't stress this enough, is that people think you are contractually obligated to reactivate your Q. I assure you, this is not the case. Riot is not holding a pen and paper to your head saying, sign this, you must always follow your Q. Just remember, the second Q is optional. Lee Sin Q addiction is a serious and tragic problem in the League of Legends community, and if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with Lee syndrome, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Even though Insec is retired, it's really cool that he managed to form an entire legacy on just one play. More than that, having such a profound impact on the entire way a champion is played and shaping how it develops in the future is something that we could all aspire to. The sky is the limit for Lee Sin, and you might be the next person to quickly discover a sick new combo. Now get out there and make Daddy Insec proud. Alright, that's gonna wrap up this interesting Pro Guides video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, make sure to check out ProGuides.com to take your game to the next level. We have so much content over there that we want you guys to go check it out, and also make sure to stay tuned to our YouTube channel. Until next time, good luck on the Rift Summoners, and I will see you all then.